Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us as part of a series that we've been putting together with our real estate, construction, development, and finance team. My name is Charles Renner. I'm a partner with the Husch Blackwell law firm and the leader of our public-private partnerships practice group. And together with my colleague, Corinne Jacoby, we are very happy to be here with today's discussion. We've been doing this for a little while now, and part of the focus has been understanding the current economic situation and that impact on development and finance and investment in the built environment. The other part of what we've been talking about is kind of the inverse, the impact of development investment on the economy in a positive way. And there's nothing, from my perspective, more immediately impactful than infrastructure investment, particularly with local economies. I think there's some very good data on that and some historical reference points. And so today's discussion is one I'm very excited to be a part of and bringing to you today. Joining me, as I mentioned, is my colleague Corinne Jacoby, and I wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. At the bottom of your audience console, there are multiple application icons for you to use during the program today. And if you have any questions during the webcast, which we have been getting as we go on through this, please submit via the question box, and we'll try to answer questions during the webcast today. But if a fuller answer is needed or we run out of time, then we'll make sure that we get that answer via email to you. And a PDF of the presentation is available in the resource folder. I think today's presentation has got some very good details behind it, and I encourage you to make sure you have access to that. This program has been approved for legal education hours as well. So to report your hours, click on the CEU icon at the bottom of the screen, and a certificate of attendance, including course numbers, will be emailed to you tomorrow, along with a recording of the webcast for watching and sharing. Toward the end of the program, be sure to complete our short survey. We use your feedback to plan future programs that are applicable to your business needs and interests. And our group discusses the topics for these webinars quite often, and the feedback that we have gotten throughout each presentation has very much impacted our topical consideration going forward. So we encourage you to give us that feedback. That's all for the housekeeping items. So let's just get started with the program. Once again, we're excited to be talking to you today about the outlook for the region with respect to federal infrastructure investment, including anticipated resources for regional transportation and water-based investment over the next 12 to 18 months, kind of in line with our outlook as it's been, as well as the next phase of Kansas City levee projects. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Corinne, and I hope you enjoy the program today. Corinne?
Thank you, Charles, and good morning, everyone. We're so pleased to have Chris Sweet, Legislative Director for U.S. Representative Mario Diaz-Balart from Florida, Southern Florida, Ron Alcapol, Director of Transportation and Environment at the Mid-America Regional Council, known as MARC, and Laurie Farmer, Senior Project Manager with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Kansas City District. Chris Sweet, our first speaker, serves as Legislative Director for U.S. Representative Diaz-Balart, is the Principal Advisor for the Congressman on issues before the Committee on Appropriations, primarily the Transportation and Housing Subcommittee. He is also responsible for issues relating to arts, energy, and the environment. Chris began working for the Congressman in May of 2011 and has served as Senior Legislative Assistant, and Legislative Correspondent in the office. Prior to that, Chris served as an aide to Delegate Tim Hugo of Virginia. Chris is originally from the Washington, D.C. area and currently resides in Fairfax, Virginia. He attended George Mason University, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Affairs, as well as a Master's of Public Policy degree. And with that, Chris, welcome.
Okay, thank you. As she mentioned, my name is Chris Sweet. I'm the legislative director for Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart. He's in Southern Florida, the 25th district, which includes portions of Miami and stretches across kind of the southern part of the state into Naples and goes up into the Everglades National Park and up by Lake Okeechobee. So he currently serves as the ranking member of the Transportation and Housing Urban Development Subcommittee of Appropriations. He's the former chairman of the committee when the Republicans had the majority. So I'm going to focus on kind of transportation infrastructure. There's other types of infrastructure funding available through other programs and agencies, programs that help broadband infrastructure or water infrastructure through, the EPA or Department of Energy through grants or loans. But for THUD, or the transportation housing, let me see if I can get this up here. I think you should be seeing the kind of breakdown of the FY20 and FY21 numbers. So the transportation section kind of funds all our roads, highways, bridges, airports, transit and seaports. So for a few years now, there's obviously been a lot of talk of kind of a grand, big infrastructure bill. And unfortunately, there hasn't been much bipartisan traction with that. So my boss always likes to say that this transportation bill is the infrastructure bill. I know over the last couple of years, we've put in about $2 billion in new infrastructure funding. So I'm just kind of highlight some of the major infrastructure accounts under the Transportation, Housing, Urban Development bill. So the FY20 numbers that you see there, that's current law. We passed that bill at the end of last year. And so we're currently working through the FY21 bill. So you can kind of see the difference in the numbers there. So for these accounts, the BUILD program, that's a competitive grant program. It helps fund all sorts of different projects, road, rail, transit, things like that. It goes to localities, cities, or counties. The highway funding, that's kind of formula funded. There's a big pot of money and it gets dispersed to the states kind of based on need and population, things like that. Capital investment grants, those are competitive grants as well that go to fund transit investments. CRISI, that's Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements. So that's kind of self-explanatory. It funds rail safety improvements. There's a couple discretionary pots of money for airports and transit. And, I know in Florida that funding has gone to runway improvements at airports or, for new buses or bus facilities, within transit. I included CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grants. That's actually under HUD, but that pot of money helps fund housing, business, or infrastructure needs in lower moderate income communities. And that funding is particularly important after a natural disaster. There's kind of a subsection of CDBG called CDBG Disaster Relief. And so that funding will go towards the same thing, businesses, homes, infrastructure funding after a natural disaster. So you can see where we are currently with FY20, where things are trending. Some things are a little higher, some things are a little lower for FY21. But a lot of these numbers, are likely to change. FY21, like I say, we're going through the process of that right now. And FY21 also includes a $75 billion pot of emergency infrastructure funding, and that is because of the coronavirus. So that I wouldn't expect that $75 billion to stay in our appropriations bill. I think that would go towards a broader COVID relief bill. I think it was included in here just to highlight the need for COVID relief as we were going through the appropriations process. So just talk about that process. This is kind of very quick timeline that we were in this year because of COVID. We've essentially been working at home, and there was kind of a pause in moving forward with appropriations bills. Appropriations, it seems like a year-long process. There's never really a normal year. Since I've been here in 2011, it's very rare that we actually get bills done by the end of the fiscal year. Usually a timeline would look like the president's budget comes out in February. We do hearings in February and March. We get through subcommittee and full committee markups of the bill in April and May, and then bills are usually on the floor throughout the summer. So again, because of this year, everything was shortened. And so we basically did everything. We'd done some hearings already, but everything else, the markups of the bill, getting it on the floor and everything like that, all happened in July. We'll see what this process looks like. The House has already finished most of their bills. The Senate hasn't even started. So in most years, once September 30th, the end of the fiscal year hits, there's not really an agreement between House and Senate. So we'll have to do a continuing resolution, which kind of just keeps the FY20 funding levels extended until however far along that continuing resolution goes. And so I would expect that to probably happen again this year because the Senate hasn't even started. I think, we would do a CR either until the end of this year or, it's even possible to do it into the following year. I know when the House flipped, when the Democrats became the majority in the House a couple of years ago, the House had already passed all of their appropriations bills with a Republican majority. But then we flipped. There was a new Congress. The Democrats took control, but we ended up actually passing almost identical bills in February of 2019. So like I said, FY20 bills passed in December. That's where we're currently at in FY21. We're working through right now. Let's see. So I think that pretty much covers everything that I had. This last slide here has a number of resources on the grant programs that I talked about. So this is where you can find information specifically on those programs. Grants.gov is kind of the one-stop shop for all federal grants. So that'll include, stuff under transportation, but also include some of those other grants that I was mentioning. And then that appropriations site, just if you have interest in seeing where we are. I know, they're active on Twitter, and I think you can sign up for a newsletter. So that is all for me. Happy to take questions at the end.
Thanks, Chris. It's somewhat heartening that during this extraordinarily abnormal year that it's just the regular, not so normal appropriations process up there. And thank you all for pressing on with that important work. Our next speaker is Ron Alcapol. Ron is a professional engineer and serves as Director of Transportation and Environment at MARC. That's the Mid-America Regional Council. It's the Council of Governments and Metropolitan Planning Organization for the bi-state Kansas City metropolitan area. Ron directs MARC's transportation and environmental planning and policy work, along with related implementation activities such as the Operation Greenlight Traffic Signal Coordination System, the Rideshare Program, and public education initiatives for air quality, water quality, active transportation, and transportation safety. Prior to serving in his current role, Ron was an assistant director with transportation at MARC, and before that held various positions with the Missouri Department of Transportation. As I mentioned, Ron is a professional engineer. He holds degrees in civil engineering from the University of Missouri and engineering management from the University of Kansas. He is an active member in the American Public Works Association and also serves on boards of several local nonprofit organizations. Ron, welcome.
Thank you, Corinne. It's great to be here this morning with the group. I wanted to spend my time today sharing some recent work that our research services team has done to do some economic forecasting on the effects of the pandemic downturn on the region, share some perspective nationally and locally about what those impacts have meant in terms of impacts to transportation performance in the country and in the region, and then walk through some of the implications for transportation funding, not just on the federal side, but the funding at the state and local level as well. And so the first sets of slides I'm going to share are ones that we developed in partnership with KC Rising, which is an initiative that we're working on with the Kansas City Area Development Council, the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, the Civic Council, and several other organizations. And using some information from Moody's Analytics, we are forecasting that the current downturn is obviously much sharper than the Great Recession of the of the 2010s, but the recovery will be faster. And we've got a range of estimates for that, but we are optimistic that we will see a quicker recovery than we saw out of the 2008 recession. In terms of impacts to employment, the Kansas City area is faring slightly better in terms of unemployment than the nation as a whole, but we're tracking very closely with national trends, and we are anticipating employment to return to pre-COVID levels in the Kansas City area sometime in 2022 at the moment. Once again, this is a much sharper, kind of really unprecedented recession in terms of unemployment than we've seen really since the Great Depression. But we are anticipating that we will see a quicker recovery. Some of the specific impacts on industries in the Kansas City area. This is also trending nationally, but our entertainment and recreation, accommodations and food services have obviously been hammered with the shutdowns. Overall, all industries have seen about a 12% decline in employment since the downturn started. We are anticipating, as I said, a recovery of about 3% by the fourth quarter of 2025. Some of the industries that will perform better than that include finance and insurance, transportation, warehousing, and construction. We are anticipating a longer impact on arts, entertainment, and recreation, manufacturing, and accommodation and food services over the long haul. And so with that, I'm going to shift to another set of slides. These were recently presented by Neil Peterson from the Transportation Research Board, but they give a really good, thorough overview of what the transportation impacts have been this year as a result of the downturn. In terms of aviation, these are all going to be national statistics, but a lot of them track very closely with the Kansas City area. Basically dropped off to nothing in April nationwide, and has returned to about 73% of prior levels as of July. Passenger car travel, we saw national declines of around 44% at the depths of the shutdown. Those have returned to about 90% of their previous levels. In terms of public transportation, we saw 60% reductions in the spring. They have returned somewhat, but much more slowly than other modes of transportation, and that's also true in the Kansas City area. One of the things that we're monitoring really closely is the impact of the sudden shift to telework. I think everybody on the panel is calling in from home office today, and that is a trend that we had been monitoring at MARC, but it's really accelerated. It's one that is likely to have a lot of uncertain impacts for travel patterns nationally and in the region as well. Goods movement in terms of truck traffic, we still had to get stuff, and so it has not been impacted as severely as the other transportation modes. And that's also been true for rail. Rail was hit a little bit harder than trucking has been nationally, but it's returning quickly. And in the Kansas City area, we saw a lot of those trends reflected at the height of the downturn back in the week of March 29th. We saw about a 46% reduction in auto travel, daily auto travel that week. Most recently, we're back up to about 90% of historic highway travel levels in the region. And since so much of our transportation funding relies on motor fuels taxes and vehicle taxes, sales taxes, all of these trends have had a pretty significant impact on, at least immediately, on transportation revenues. And they've manifested themselves differently in different systems. So in Missouri, MoDOT has been very financially constrained for decades. They had been really spending down their reserves to maximize their use of federal funding, and so this downturn has hit them particularly hard, and they're particularly cautious about the potential impacts of delays in federal funding in the future. So one of the ways this has manifested on MoDOT's system is that they made a decision to defer developing a new statewide transportation program. They typically do that annually, and they made the decision this year to just roll the current STIP forward another year. They are amending it as needed, but they didn't add new projects to the transportation program. Some of the things that they have noted, though, vehicle sales bounced back pretty quickly in the spring, and so they have been seeing sharper increases in vehicle sales taxes collected and registration fees, which has surprised them a little bit. So their funding picture is pretty uncertain, but they're proceeding very cautiously. KDOT, on the other hand, benefited from a new state transportation program that the legislature adopted in the spring, called the Eisenhower Transportation Program, and they've already announced a first set of projects funded with that program. Two of the major expansion projects in the state are also in the Kansas City area, and I'll talk about them a little bit later. They've announced cost share projects, and so at this point they've not made any delays or held up their program. This new program has a new feature that it's a flexible rolling program, and so their intent was to add projects to the program every couple of years. So as the recovery happens, we'll need to monitor that very closely to make sure that that's still the case. In the Kansas City area, we have not really seen local governments deferring capital projects. The downturn's been a great time to do some construction work. I think there's some news in the Kansas City Star about Kansas City, Missouri proceeding with the Barney Alice Plaza project. They announced that today, taking advantage of the fact that it's not being utilized right now. I think that's one approach that local governments are taking. One of the impacts of COVID on transportation project delivery has been for projects that require right-of-way condemnation or court proceedings to proceed with the courts closed down. That has had some schedule impacts on projects, but we've not really seen any significant delays based on funding concerns. And of course, as Chris talked about, we are kind of waiting with bated breath to see what will happen with the renewal of the FAST Act, where conventional wisdom is that we are looking at a series of extensions there. In our work to do estimates for the long-range transportation plan and our transportation improvement program, we're basically anticipating extending federal investment in transportation at pretty close to historic levels out of the FAST Act. In terms of major projects that we have on the horizon, our transportation improvement program includes about $2 billion of investment right now. So a lot of smaller projects, but there are a few what we call major projects, over $100 million that we're anticipating. On the Kansas side, two of them were just announced as part of the Ike program, and those include expanding the US 69 corridor from 103rd Street to 151st Street, and then the replacement of the Centennial Bridge in Leavenworth on K92. In Missouri, the biggest project we've been working on, and Mark has allocated a significant share of the region's suballocated federal dollars to it, is the replacement of the Buck O'Neill Bridge. It's incorrectly listed here as US 69. It's actually US 169. I apologize for that. But MoDOT is making progress on that. They've announced a set of 5 different design build teams that have been pre-qualified to submit proposals to do that project. And those proposals will be will be due in February of 2021. So we're anticipating that project moving forward with construction starting in the spring next year. There was some really important news about the streetcar. Yesterday, the Federal Transit Administration has allocated $50 million to continue the preliminary engineering on that work. This is a $350 million project to extend the streetcar south to UMKC from its current terminus at Union Station. It's probably the largest capital project in our transportation improvement program right now, and we're anticipating that it will receive the capital improvement grant funding needed to complete it. They're looking for about $174 million of federal funds to construct the project. And so with that, I just wanted to share some links about a couple of products that we've worked on recently at MARC. The Connected KC Regional Transportation Plan was just adopted by our board in June. It includes about 400 different projects, around $52 billion of estimated transportation revenues and expenditures through the year 2050. About $7 billion of that is in constrained highway construction projects. There's another $7 billion of illustrative projects in that plan, and about $1.2 billion in public transportation investments. And then our current transportation improvement program, which we will be updating in 2021, is also linked. That, as I said, has about $2 billion of highway, bike ped, transit investment for the Kansas City region there. So I'll be happy to answer questions when the time comes, and I will turn it back to Corinne and Lori.
Thanks, Ron. Yes, that was very exciting news about the Kansas City streetcar. I'm right there on the southern end of the extension, and I'm looking forward to it, most certainly. Our next speaker is Lori Farmer, and Lori is a senior project manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Kansas City's Levees program, with the responsibility to manage engineering, design, and construction of the Argentine levee unit. Lori led the request for proposal development of a $33 million pump station replacement design build contract, and is now overseeing the pump station's design and construction efforts. At the same time, she is leading the Corps' in-house design team as they develop plans and specifications to raise the Argentine levee. The Argentine levee unit is one of 3 levees planned to be raised along the Kansas River, with program costs for the 3 units totaling over $450 million. Ms. Farmer has 18 years of experience in both private industry and federal government in project management, strategic planning, and regulation compliance. She has extensive experience in leading large and geographically dispersed teams with demonstrated success in innovative problem solving, something that undoubtedly serves her well as so many of us are now working from home. Ms. Farmer led the federal team in the development of an environmental impact statement for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency's new campus in St. Louis, Missouri, from November 2014 through June 2016. And after that, led the federal quality assurance efforts in site cleanup and preparation through August 2018. She began her career with the Corps in the St. Louis district, and brings distinctive and diversified leadership and experience to the Kansas City district. Prior to joining the Corps in 2007, Ms. Farmer had experience in private industry and as an environmental consultant. Lori holds master's in biology from the University of Memphis and a bachelor's in forestry from the Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. And she is a certified project management professional. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, good morning. Thanks. I'm sorry I'm not able to join you live via the web meeting. Evidently, there's a Department of Defense block against allowing you to see me live, but we were lucky to be able to patch me in via the phone. So I'd like to present to you a program for the Kansas City region that is a significant investment in flood protection infrastructure. So I consider this a great highlight of, over the next several years, we're going to be able to, we have funds set aside to invest in flood protection infrastructure. So this is a good opportunity for those that are in industry to take note, because this is going to be ongoing. We're currently in the middle of design for the Kansas City levees. So I looked at the attendee list before getting on here, and I could see that there are several on this call that have been participating in the Kansas City Levees program. As we've been moving along, and, this is an investment that the Kansas City District has been making on a 7-unit system, both along the Missouri River and the Kansas River since 2007. So you can see on this, I even use an old graphic here to just kind of show you and display how long we've been working at it. But you can see those green check marks on areas where we've already been doing modifications along the main stem river. Now we're working on the last bit of phase 1, which was authorized many years ago, and we're moving into phase 2. So those are the 3 levee units that are along the Kansas River, and that's Argentine Levee, Armourdale Levee, and the Central Industrial District. This is it's very much in the metro area, a lot of it in Kansas and some of it in Missouri. The whole 7-unit system is 60 miles of levee and flood wall protecting our inner core, 32 square miles of protected area, and you could see roughly 100,000 jobs and 7,000 structures. So as we've been moving along on this program for many, many years, it got a huge injection of funds through the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. And that's when $453 million was authorized to help these 3 units, Argentine, Armourdale, and CID, to raise these 3 levee units roughly 4 to 5 feet. So that's about 18 miles of levee and flood wall improvements that are going to get raised. This is a major investment. There's a lot of major infrastructure that is crossing through and part of this unit. So we had to make some decisions fast, because not only with that price tag came a timeline that we need to accomplish it in. So there's a lot of decisions that need to be made in short order on how we're going to accomplish the design, how we're going to accomplish the construction, what are our acquisition strategies, and how are we going to get the real estate to do this. So you can see already, I'm setting the stage. There's a lot of partners involved in this. So here's an updated graphic, our graphic for 2020. It gives you a little bit of better detail of where we're at in the metro area. You can see I-70 is crossing through, 635 is crossing through Argentine there. 670 is going through. We also have KDOT highways 32 and 69, just to name a few. I mean, these are some major road networks in the metro area. Here's kind of just a highlight of Argentine, Armourdale, and CID. It spans both Kansas and Missouri. A majority of the levees are on the Kansas side. We do have some levee itself in the state of Missouri, but you can see on the Central Industrial District, which is what we call CID, there's a lot of protection that the levee on the CID unit provides to the state of Missouri there. So these 3 levee units, they all have different needs. Argentine's going to be considerably more earthen levee. That's the one I'm the project manager on. Then Armourdale and CID. Armourdale, CID, you're going to see a little bit more flood wall raise and less earthen levee. Overall, there is a program manager for this. His name's Scott Mensing. I'd like to identify him as the overall program manager for the Corps. I'm one of the project managers, as Corinne had mentioned. I'm on the Argentine levee unit. Josh Beckman is he's on the levee raise for the CID Armourdale units, and Zach Parsons, he does the pump station efforts on the CID and Armourdale units. So this is kind of getting down into the nitty-gritty on each of the levees here and what you can expect for each of the units. Just trying to impress upon you the enormity of this. About 1 million cubic yards of earth and material. If you can envision those three units, the bend upstream of Argentine is where a huge part of the borrow is going to be coming from. There's a couple other borrow sources as well, but we're looking at raising the existing levee and improving under seepage and stability on this. So along with that raising of the levee, you got gate wells along the way. Those are going to have to come up too. You have utilities that cross throughout. Those are now going to be, many of them are going to have to go up and over. So there's been a massive amount of utility coordination between comms utilities, sewer, water, gas, all of them. And then, of course, also the railroads. We're doing a lot of coordination with railroads. So you can see over here on the left-hand side, Argentine levee unit, roughly 5 miles of levee improvements, a mile of flood wall construction, and 45 relief wells. Couple closure structures. We're dealing with BNSF railroads on the Argentine levee unit. On the Armourdale levee unit, roughly 3 miles of levee improvements and 4 miles of flood wall construction. There's a lot more relief wells that are going into the Armourdale levee unit. You got quite a few stop block closure structures, 2 sandbag gap structures. CID, again, less levee improvement, more flood wall construction, the fewest number of relief wells, but we do have some major stop block closure structures on the CID unit. So I wanted to bring up these levee and flood wall. This is your big levee raise. It's going to be one design bid build contract that's coming out here shortly. So those that are interested in this, take note. This is the last big contract for this Kansas City Levees program. Now, the ones on the right, we are also doing pump station improvements to help improve that reliability and resiliency. Argentine levee units got 2 pump station replacements and a modification. This has already been awarded as a design build effort, gone to Michaels Corporation, and Cole and Associates is their designer. Armourdale levee unit, we do have a couple small business construction opportunities, both for Armourdale and the CID unit. The design is done. That business or that opportunity has been advertised and closed already, but those are 2 small business opportunities that are coming out here, or that are going to be awarded here in the near future. So we couldn't do this on our own. The Corps would not be able to accomplish this without partners. It is a very large team. We have 3 non-federal sponsors. Kaw Valley Drainage District handles the O&M on these levees and will continue to do so after construction. Unified Government and the City of Kansas City, Missouri, both are helping us with real estate. Granted, a lot of it is in the state of Kansas. The Unified Government's got a huge lift on real estate in those acquisitions, those real estate transactions with the private landowners along the way. It's over a 200-member team that is performing this right now for the design. We got design partnerships with multiple firms. USAID couldn't do this alone. It would be way overwhelming to the district on such a tight schedule. We're utilizing design build, AE design support, in-house design strategies to accomplish all of this. And I also want to say that Kaw Valley and Unified Government, they have their own design support as they've been going along. A lot of small business support for Unified Government, a lot of small business support along the way. The railroad infrastructure on this has been pretty enormous. We're coordinating with 3 Class 1 railroads, Union Pacific, BNSF, Kansas City Southern. There's 11 closure structures. You guys probably didn't, you saw quite a few on each unit, but 11 in total, 8 railroad agreements, 2 major switch yards. So that yard in Argentine is the 2nd largest in the nation. So the volume of traffic that's going behind these levees and through them is pretty amazing. We have 45 million tons of goods that are passing through Kansas City by rail each year. So you can bet that we're working a lot with those railroads. We're meeting with them monthly to get an understanding of their schedule and their needs as we're looking to create closure structures along the levee unit in the event of a flood. And again, community. We've been working hand in hand with the residents, private landowners, understanding what their needs are. If necessary, reworking design in some properties, trying to work along the way with the community members and make it safe and a good system for them. So if you're in industry, this is probably what you're interested in. The levee and flood wall raise. This is, again, those 3 levee units that is going to be announced here pretty shortly. Value is up and over $300 million. This is going to be a 2-step sealed bid process. So firm fixed price, design bid build, full and open competition. This is anticipated to come out. I have listed September 2020 here. It's actually going to be more like early October. Just spoke with contracting this morning. So be looking for that in Fed Biz Ops. If you're interested, that is a big opportunity coming up. So we're looking at that first step. This is a qualifications step. That step 2, which will be coming out in January 2021, that's going to be your price proposal. We're anticipating an award on this in April of 2021. Already been working a lot with area engineers. The construction is anticipated. This will be the construction that will be awarded in April of 2021. As I mentioned, the Armadale pump station, small business, those construction opportunities, they've already been advertised. CID pump station repairs, those have already been advertised. Not awarded, but that advertisement is closed. You know, I know with the emphasis on the long-term pipeline and opportunities and in the state of economic downturn, I did put up this slide to give folks on the line, if they can't make this big levee raise construction that I'm particularly involved with. I did want to share with you some other contract opportunities while I had those on the line that might be interested. You can see there's other small business opportunities within the Kansas City district, other levee raise opportunities, if you are more kind of of the civil works orientation. So those are opportunities for you in the Kansas City area. If you have contracting questions, I encourage you to reach out to Jay Denker, who is in our contracting office, particularly about the Kansas City Levees program. He can answer any contracting questions regarding that, but then also direct you in the right location for the other contracts that are going to be coming up and made available. These slides just kind of letting organizers know I have no problem releasing these slides. They can be made available to those that are attending this panel. If you have any additional information about the Kansas City Levees program, feel free to visit this website or feel free to get in touch with myself. Again, Scott Mencine is the program. Reach out to him as well. We're here to answer any questions. All right. Thanks for letting me share this program.
Thank you, Lori. So just kind of a little bit of a backstory, having helped launch the KC Levees project with a team of just 2 individuals, 2 people, myself and one other, in the late 90s. It is so great to see it progress and near completion many, many years later. It's a long project, a big effort, a big haul, but thank you so much. It's wonderful to see it nearing completion. Also, I want to say that I appreciate you sharing the other exciting and many other contracting opportunities for folks on upcoming projects. So much appreciated. With that, We are going to move into our question and answer session. And Charles, I will turn it back to you to kick that off for us.
Thanks, Corinne, and thanks, everyone. And yeah, we do have time for a few questions with the panel. And I think if there's a couple of takeaways from the presentations up till now, including the reference to the streetcar funding, which I think is a exciting and undertaking and a project that a lot of folks are aware of. So clearly, infrastructure investment is going to have a significant impact and can have a real positive impact for the region, the economy. And so the first question I direct at Chris to begin with, and that is, obviously we're going through a political moment, and there's an election coming, and it's not an unusual question in normal times, let alone now. But just on a looking forward basis, can you give us a little bit of your perspective on what the expectations should be for some federal funding on a going forward basis for infrastructure investment? And then maybe we can have a little additional perspective from the others as well. But we'll start with that, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, the federal investment will be there. It's just, as I was talking about kind of the appropriations process, it's tough to kind of plan for when exactly that funding will be available. With formula type funding, you can kind of know how much you're getting, but with, competitive grants, you've obviously got to bid for them. And then, what happens if you don't get that bid? But I think, like I say, I think the federal investment will be there. We've had for a number of years now good infrastructure funding in our bill, the THUD bill. I think, that will continue. Appropriations is fairly bipartisan, and there's bipartisan support for infrastructure funding. So I think, like I say, the one issue is when is that funding going to be available? How long does the CR go for? And then when do the funds go out to the public? And those websites that I kind of highlighted, that's where the information would be on, okay, here, this pot of money is now up for, competition, basically. So, applications can start going in. So, it does make it kind of tough to plan, like I was saying. But, I think the investment, the funding will still be there.
Ron, on the recipient side, kind of the same question, and maybe, Mark has the advantage of not just being a transportation based organization, but really kind of a convener of the local governments. And so from the recipient's standpoint, what do you think those expectations are in the next 12 to 18 months for infrastructure investment support?
In the near term, it's always a little difficult to predict exact levels, as they're going to. It depends on what Congress does, especially in a year like this, where we're at the end of an authorization bill and kind of headed into probably what looks like at least some period of time where we're working on extensions. But with the kind of intermediate to longer term look, our expectations are pretty positive. We're not seeing radical cuts in federal funding for transportation in the near term. I think structurally there's some real issues to be concerned about in terms of the buying power of the motor fuels tax that really hasn't been increased at a federal level or in the state of Missouri for decades. So longer term, there's some issues to keep an eye on. But for the next couple of years, we're anticipating basically slight increases in federal funding for transportation on the order of maybe 1% to 2% a year, but no real dramatic swings.
Thanks, that's helpful. Corinne, I'll let you take it with the next question for the group.
All right, thanks, Charles. So, Ron, this is another one for you, and it relates to the Kansas City streetcar. And if you could you go over the acquisition strategy for the streetcar project design and the timing for that RFP? Given what we heard
That's
about this yesterday, I'm sure you have it all figured out.
well. So Mark is not in charge of that project, so I would really need to defer that to the folks at the Streetcar Authority in terms of the acquisition schedule. I think that my understanding is that they have been continuing to do work planning and preparing the project so that it can move quickly, but I don't have a specific timetable for when any construction projects might be awarded as a result of that. I'd be happy to do some research and if you follow up with attendees, we can get that information for you, but that's not something I've got off the top of my head. Apologize for that.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. And thank you. We appreciate the follow-up. And I think the questioner was interested in particular in the design contract awards. So
with the recent funding, they're going to be coming out soon. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Charles, back to you.
Great. Lori, and we talked about this a little bit even before we had the discussion going on now, but obviously one of the impacts of an economic downturn is that it's more hardly felt or harder felt on small businesses. One of the advantages to infrastructure investment is the kind of what Corinne was just touching on, is just the opportunities for the private sector to participate and jumpstart things. So maybe you could give us a little insight, not just on the project you referenced, but overall what the Corps' approach is to participation from small businesses and service providers on a local level.
Yeah, I think that the Kansas City District has a pretty good track record of small business participation across the district. A lot of times we do have district goals that emphasize different types of contracts that need to be awarded throughout the year. So unfortunately, I'm not versed to really talk about that today, but I do know that on the Kansas City Levees program, we do have a lot of small business opportunity, just specified contracts that are coming out, but then also, just as we have gone through the review process, not just us, but our partners have all been reaching out to the small business community through the design process. And now the big construction contract is not just going to be one large construction contract. They will be required to have a subcontracting plan that is acceptable to the contracting officer. So there will be a lot of small business opportunity to fulfill all the construction requirements as we move along with the Kansas City Levees program.
Okay, that's great to hear, Laurie. And another question, this one is for all of you. And Chris, we'll perhaps let you start. While we are seeing project continuations and planning for future work, the current finance and bid letting environment may be seizing up. So generally speaking, how should the public view the public sector infrastructure pipeline?
I mean, like I was saying, the funding is going to be there, but how much is it going to be, and when is it going to be available? So it's not a great answer, but they need to be informed of what's out there, what's available, and like I say, look at all available resources.
All right, very good. Laurie, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I guess what on a civil works project such as this, Corinne, you did mention that you had worked on it for many years prior to it culminating into something like this. So these are kind of a long time coming. What I can tell you about the Kansas City District is that we do have about 4 mega projects going on right now. This is one of them. anytime we get to that approach to that $500 million mark, that is considered a mega in the eyes of USACE. So while there's others on the military construction side, there is a lot of opportunity out there in the design and construction industry. So we got a lot going on in the Kansas City district, and that Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018, well, that was mostly to fund repairs from Hurricane Maria. There was a lot of other civil works projects in other districts that were also funded similar to what we're doing on the Kansas City Levees program. So there's a lot of other federal infrastructure investment that's tied to that Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. So right now, you know, these projects, they're long term, they're 3 to 5 years. So right now the pipeline's looking pretty good in the next 3 to 5 year window.
All right, that is great to hear. And Ron, anything that you would like to add?
I think the spring and summer have been kind of uncertain, and folks have been hesitating a little bit. But similarly, we've got a pipeline of projects that goes out 5 years in the Transportation Improvement Program. I will say, you know, from what I hear from my friends in the industry, that the programs that we have in Kansas and particularly in Missouri are not nearly as robust as some other states that have done work to increase their own revenue streams, but it's steady. We are not anticipating any major disruptions in projects coming through. A lot of the work that we're seeing now, though, tends to be focused more on kind of rehabilitation and reconstruction of existing stuff, and much less investment in new construction and expansion projects than we've seen in the past. So that's something that's not an immediate trend that's being caused by the current downtrend, but kind of a symptom of where we've been in terms of funding in both states.
All right, thank you. Yes, those rehabilitation is a cyclical need, and when it comes around, it does require attention. So, Charles, back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we've got time for one more question before we close out with everyone. And I'm going to pick off of what Ron had referenced, which was the pipeline of projects, and ask a question of Chris specifically. Chris, you know, there's been I think more now a lasting bipartisan consensus on infrastructure investment. And to the extent there is some breakthrough on a larger spend like that, our assumption has been that that shovel-ready concept is going to be one of the key aspects for where those funds are directed. And we've got a fair amount of public sector folks joining, local municipal folks joining in the audience today that have got responsibilities for that, as well as a number of private sector participants that are paying attention to project status. So maybe you could just give us your reaction to whether you think when that next funding push comes, if we should continue to expect that the stage of procurement, the shovel-ready status, is going to be one of those weighting factors as communities start to compete for funds.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes back to a big infrastructure bill. There's things that people want to focus on, shovel-ready projects. How do we get those moving through the pipeline quicker? Kind of to piggyback off the last question as well, I think it's really important for localities, counties, cities to work with regional offices for agencies. Because I know at least, in South Florida, Miami-Dade County, for example, works pretty closely. They've got specific projects in mind that they're working on developing, and they work with the local agencies down there to kind of fit the criteria that some of these programs are going to be, under. So that would help, I think, move projects along, and kind of, if you're working with these regional offices, to kind of not necessarily tailor your program tailor your project, but to what they require, but to work with them to make it more competitive, that's going to go a long way. And if you can show that you're shovel ready, that's going to go a long way as well, because federal government doesn't want to give out money and then have to take it back if something goes wrong, which has happened in our area as well. Projects that we thought were shovel ready to go, ended up costing double or triple what they originally said, and federal government had to take the money back. So working with the agencies is a good way to kind of move things along.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope the information was helpful to you and your organization. As a reminder, this program has been approved for legal education hours. And to report your hours, you may click on the CEU icon at the bottom of the screen. For those participants wanting to use this program to self-report professional development hours for other professions, a certificate of attendance, including course numbers, will be emailed to you tomorrow, along with a recording of the webcast for watching and sharing at your leisure. Lastly, please be sure to complete our short survey, my apologies. As Charles shared, we use your feedback to plan future programs that are applicable to your business needs. And this program in particular was a result of feedback that we had received on previous webinars. So thank you for your time and attention today. We appreciate it. And thank you in advance for your feedback. That concludes our webinar. Have a great day.